Yes. Welcome in, everybody, to the Always Soccer in Philadelphia program coming at you on November 25th, 2025. It is the year ender, the postmortem for a Philadelphia Union season that was a successful season, one of the most successful seasons in franchise history, that also ended in disappointing fashion at the same time, proving, as we know, always that more than one thing can be true. And we are going to talk about pretty much everything that's on the slate for the 2025 Philadelphia Union season with Jose Nunez, who joins the show right now. What's up, my friend? How are you?
I'm doing well. We were speaking briefly ahead of the show, just how it's, as press, we try to hold ourselves as professionals, etc. But ultimately, we have I think, a soft spot for this team, obviously being in Philadelphia, being around the area, whatnot. But what an interesting season. I think fair to say it shocked a ton of people, but at the same time also shocked a ton of people how it went out. Right, sort of farted its way out of the playoffs there with that last game. So a ton to unpack from stem to stern. Truly,
it's unique when you can be very satisfied with the season and totally disappointed with the season at the same time. It's a very Philadelphia thing. So in a way, the Union are squarely in the same realm as the Phillies and the Eagles and the Sixers and the Flyers. Maybe you don't like soccer and you don't want to include them in the 4-for-4 thing, but they behave just like any of the other teams in town when it comes to doing so well up to a certain point and then finding a way to end it with a bit of bitterness. But before we get any further into any of that, let me go through the rundown that I have prepared for you all. We're going to hit the New York game and recap it real quick. We're going to talk about a successful season and sort of what defines what's successful, what's not successful. Supporter Shield thoughts and re-litigation, I guess at this point now. We will talk about the allegations that have been made against Ernst Tanner of homophobic, racist, and what's the third one? Misogynistic comments allegedly made by him. We'll talk about what that means for Jay Sugarman. We'll do a quick who stays and who goes, contracts and options and all that kind of stuff. I would like to talk a little bit about the ceiling for German moneyball, and then we will get into the winter schedule. But man, I went back and looked at I just watched kind of the extended highlights of the game and then some video clips and whatnot. And I think with the benefit of hindsight, you're looking at it now 24 hours after the loss, 48 hours after the loss. Honestly, man, I truly do not believe that they played that badly in this game. It definitely was not your classic, get dog walked by Lionel Messi, show up afraid and get dog walked and lose 3-0 or 3-1 in a semifinal, which is sort of what happened to them in Nashville, the 2018 US Open Cup final, some of the other semifinals that they played. And I just think it came down to two things, really. Number one, New York played well, man. Credit where it's due. They had a lot of composure on the ball. They did not look phased at all with the physicality that the Union were showing them. Number two, I just don't think that the Union really had their A game. They were kind of disjointed in their pressing. They weren't winning balls that they normally win. Second balls weren't always there. Jacob Gletzis in the back line were a little bit off. The spacing was off. So, listen, man, credit where it's due to New York. I thought they played really well, and that was a great goal that they scored. But, the Union had chances, man. It wasn't like they just rolled over and died. So, that's my assessment of it. It's disappointing, yes, but I don't think it's a classic. That's so Union, fall apart.
No, it's not like the wheels came off the way that they did for Cincinnati, right? To have Messi come to town and just body bag them 4-0 at TQL, right? That would have been the most Philadelphia way to go out. So for them to have this really good game against, I think a team that I wish the league, and I say that as someone who writes for them from time to time, I wish the league would make more of a rivalry over against NYC FC over the way that they try to shoehorn DC and the way that they try to shoehorn Red Bulls anymore. a really good team, which I think makes that loss earlier in the season against New York all that much better per se, right? I think at the time it was sort of a disappointing. How are you losing to a team that's barely on the fringe of the playoffs? But to now fast forward what we know, it feels a little bit better knowing that was a good loss per se. But in terms of the game, I think we would be dishonest if we didn't mention just how tough it must have been for Cornell and company to figure out how to deal with 22 days in between games, right? Like
That's a
the
joke. It's a joke. I mean, it's a huge joke. Yeah.
it's tough, right? I think I don't know. It may be fair to say, and I know people that work within the organization certainly follow you, certainly read what I put out, etc. But like, not to disparage the guy because I think he played out of his mind the entire season, especially as a surprise rookie. But Lukic had a very rough game against New York City. I don't know that he had. I don't think he had an A game by any stretch of the imagination. I also think that New York figured out that, let them have some of that possession and we'll figure out how to break them down. And that's exactly what they did. I think I saw your interaction between with you and Matt Doyle kind of talking about, how the Union sort of got, teams that don't freak out in possession, figure out the Union. And that's exactly what happened here where, they broke the press once or twice, and next thing you know, it was just scrambling to barely, defend something, or as Jim Curtin used to always say, bend, not break. There was a lot of that. There was a ton of that in this game. So I don't know, man. I think it's fair to say that we all wish there would have been a different result, but you can't be upset with the way that they lost too much. Just a ton of things going against them, but you gotta beat and deal with what's in front of you to be the best. And they just couldn't sort out the 22 days.
I think it was a disappointment too that New York was missing a couple of key guys, and I said on Twitter after the game, I was like, look, New York played well, give them credit. I'm not gonna shit all over them, make it all about the Union. But again, I still think that that's a team that you should beat at home if you're the number 1 seed and the Supporters Shield winner. So I don't think that's a hot take or anything. And you know what? Like Lukic didn't have a great game. Glesnes didn't have a great game. I think, the goal that New York scored really was a product of them just kind of being off with their pressing and their pressure. And, just to quickly go through it. Lukic comes up, tries to press at midfield. He misses, can't win the ball. Kai steps up. He's the secondary pressure. He comes up. He can't win the ball either. Now they're moving the other way and they've broken, well, not that line, but they've broken past those two guys. Makanya has to come out and address the ball, and now basically they're playing 3v4. He doesn't win. He missed that challenge and let the guy get by him too. So that's 3 times in a row. The reason you send those waves of pressure, man, is because the first guy doesn't get it, and the second guy's going to get it. If the second guy doesn't get it, the third guy gets it. What happens if the third guy doesn't get it? Shit, now we're like, Jacob Glesnes and Nate Harriel are like on a 2v3 trying to figure out what they should do, and Danley at least was sprinting back and trying to get something on it. But it was great movement by New York. And again, I think Matt Doyle was consistent with that all year long. Reading his stuff on the MLS website, he said, "Look, I just think that not to take anything away from Philly, but I don't think murder ball works against teams that have a lot of composure." And NYC showed a lot of composure. This wasn't the Chicago Fire with the backup goalkeeper handing you 2 goals on a platter, basically dropping it right at your feet. So. I think that was pretty much it. Disappointing, but the effort was there. There was never a question of effort or getting up for a game or playing down to competition or anything like that. I mean, they only got blown out once this entire year. So if they were going to go out, that's kind of how I foresaw it happening.
Do you think Philadelphia benefits if they don't, I guess if they don't get handed those 2 goals in the platter against Chicago, somehow they lose that second game and they have a shorter break. I would think that benefits them a little bit, but at that point you're begging to extend this playoff another whatever, like 5 days in between games.
I feel like I'm having like post-traumatic stress disorder when the Phillies beat the Braves 2 years in a row, and the Braves are just bitching about like how much the time off between is it punishment to win the NL East, but yeah, man, you're right, you're rusty. It's a long time to go. I guess I'll use the age-old argument that New York had to wait too. You know, I think here's my last point that I'll make on the game itself. They had 4. You talk about Matt Freeze saves, and they were great saves, all of them. But 4 misses that I counted that I didn't even really see people doing much talking about online was first half. Makania has a free header at the back post, heads it down and into the ground, which he's supposed to do, but he just didn't get anything on it. Baribo, I thought, had a tap in from Danley on the right side, playing across, low cross in behind him, didn't really get anything on it. Danley had a free header too later where the ball was kind of behind him. You lean him back, and those are weird because you think the guy in front of you surely is going to get something on it. That's kind of a tough play, but again, you got to do better there. And obviously, Westfield on the back post at the end there for sure. So maybe just 3 misses that I thought were underrated, but again, it's well, I'm looking at the stats here. It was 20 shots, 5 on goal, something like that. So
yeah,
wasn't for a lack of trying, but listen, man, that's just how it goes. I do have to say, and I don't want to be Negadelphia. I'm much more Potsadelphia, for this than Negadelphia, honestly, but I do think they may have saved themselves an ass kicking at the hands of Lionel Messi next week. So.
What was it? Within some writing groups, some people were apologizing or saying, so sorry to see Philly go out, whatever. It's like, well, to be honest with you, it's probably for the best to not have to see Philadelphia have to host Messi, and sure, the headaches that brings as a press member, never mind a regular old, normal person going into the game with the ticket pricing, the lack of space around Subaru Park, all those fun things to deal with as a regular person. But more than anything, not having to sit and potentially watch a team that's just, I honestly thought that Cincinnati was going to win it all. And if anything, I think there's a bigger conversation to be had about Pat Noonan. Can he get it done? And where's the microscope on him, considering, that's a team unlike Jim and Philadelphia and now Cornell that actually spends, right? They brought Kevin Denke. They brought Brenner back. They went and bought some pretty big player, Echenike as well. It's a good
got
team.
Evander out there.
Yeah, should sort that out. But of course, I wonder what the future holds for Pat. But that's a completely different conversation altogether.
Yeah. But I think for me, and we have our first Thomas Mueller comment 13 minutes into the podcast. We should have went out and got him, I guess. Well, we will never know what would have happened if they did. Listen, man, it's so funny because I didn't expect anything out of this team this year. I think when we did the last time we did this one-off podcast, what did we do? Like 3 of them this year, 2, and then this one.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I had talked about the thing about it's not that I set low expectations for this team, or high expectations or any kind. I didn't set any expectations at all. It was just, I went into the season thinking whatever they are is what they are, and they're very transparent about what they were going to be. They were going to play Red Bull style with a Red Bull coach. They traded Jack McGlynn and they traded Danny Gosdog, and they built a Red Bull car crash team, and they were, exactly what they said they were going to be. And they kept winning and winning and winning and winning. And, it ended up being one of the greatest seasons that they've ever had. So Dave Zeitlin and I sat on this podcast for years and said, the only thing that matters is winning trophies, and only 2 seasons out of 16, I guess now, have ended with the Union winning trophies. So of course it's a successful season. How can it not be? I would be a hypocrite to be sitting here saying that it's not a successful season. Of course it is. Anytime you put anything in the trophy cabinet, it is. But with the Shield, of course, comes the litigation and the asterisks that are natural, when you play an unbalanced schedule. And that's why I did that whole big story after they won the Shield, basically trying to analyze all the possible storylines of what people might bring up now or in the future, to go back and determine how good really was this team. And I think that is kind of informed, unfortunately, a little bit now by an early playoff exit, because you're going to look at this team and say, what did that Shield winning team do? Well, they lost in the second round. So that's going to hang over them, of course, like any NFL team, like any Andy Reid Eagles team that went like 13-3 back in the day and then lost to Tampa or Carolina or whatever. So that's natural. But going back now, I guess the question I have for you is, does the Shield lose any luster based on this loss this early in the playoffs?
I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth a little bit, which I think I do a lot of, but I think it's
That was
probably
John Hackworth's favorite answer was, well, yes and no.
Well, I think it's admirable. I was, and I think you picked this up for me in terms of our conversations, whether they are on the record, on screen, or we're just texting or whatever, messaging. But I've been overly positive on this team from the get-go. I had a good feeling from knowing what type of players were coming back, and then in hearing from people, sources, etc., the type of players that they were bringing in terms of Lukic, the next level that Danley was going to hit, which I think is fair to say he absolutely hit should be playing in Europe level this year. And ultimately Olwethu Makanya, that was never explored with Jim Curtin, right? So those are genuinely just about 3 new players that were going to completely change this team. So I had an idea that they were going to be good, but I would be lying if I said that I thought or felt like they were going to be a Supporter Shield winning team. So I don't want to take that away from them. It was an awesome, awesome season. Where maybe I'm talking on the other side of my mouth here is just the early exit does take away from it when you look at the fact that Vancouver played in how many competitions and they're still going, right? They went far in CONCACAF. They're obviously going far in MLS. They've been involved in a ton of games, and they're still being able to figure it out despite the injuries of someone like a Gald, right? Who they more or less shaped their entire shaped their entire attack at the time early in the season, and then they pivot. And obviously Thomas Mueller comes in, second mention of the man in the podcast. But I think that it's often overlooked with this team this season specifically. This was the opportunity to win 3 things more than ever in all likely the last this window, if we call it the Ernst Tanner window / Ernie Stewart, when they started really climbing onto what they were going to come to be. This was the season to win the Supporter Shield. This was the season to win MLS Cup. And this was the season to win the US Open Cup, because that's all they were dealing with. In reality, 2 competitions versus having to be shoehorned into Leagues Cup like they were last year, as well as CONCACAF at the time. So, last year they were dealing with 4 competitions at the time, including the fact that CONCACAF starts so early in the season that they're playing CONCACAF games before they've even opened ground for MLS Cup, or MLS regular season. So that's where I'm sort of this was the one opportunity, and God forbid, Kevin, this would be frankly the most Philadelphia thing possible. And I know we're going to touch on it a little bit later. That sprint season that's going to reshape the calendar, those 14 games that are going to make up this 2027 sprint season.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not much of a betting man, but I have a feeling that might be a good Philadelphia opportunity to win the Mickey Mouse trophy with the gigantic asterisk, much like the first Shield in a way, right?
Yeah.
That's the most Philadelphia way to get an MLS Cup, right? On a 14 game season or 17 game season plus whatever bullshit playoff setup that they put together for that one season. So I don't know. Is the asterisk big for this season? I don't think so. But is it negligible? I don't think so either. I think that there's a little bit of, the schedule is unbalanced. Plus, you only played in 2 competitions, but you can't fault them, right? That's what the league decided to do with these teams.
Well, so let me just go down now with the, benefit of some hindsight here and relitigate just a couple of these points, or just not relitigate, but just look at a couple of these points from the story again. So they finished with 66. So they are now, in the history books, they're tied for the 10th most points as a Shield winner, tied with the 2012 Quakes, which was Alan Gordon and Stephen Lenhart and Sam Cronin and the Bash Brothers era. And that was a good team. So that's not bad company to be in. It is interesting to me, of course, that the the 2 Shield winners in Philadelphia Union history, I don't think either one of those teams was as good as the 2022 team, obviously, that went to MLS Cup, and the only reason that team didn't win the Shield is just because they lost the ridiculous tiebreaker to LAFC, despite having a plus 46 goal differential. So again, 2 Shield winners, but I still think the best team in Union history was a non-Shield winner, which is just funny how sometimes you're just at the mercy of how other teams in the other conference do. So that's the one thing. Schedule strength. So they managed to avoid in the West San Diego, Minnesota, LAFC, Seattle, Austin, and Portland. All of those teams went to the playoffs. The only two teams that they did play that were playoff teams were Vancouver and Dallas. They got thrashed by Vancouver. Put a fat asterisk on that because, the squad rotation, the Open Cup thing happening, I don't know how much stock you really put in that. Dallas, they should have won. That was a choke job with the playing up a man. They couldn't get it done. In the East, their best win, Cincinnati road game. One of the best games I've watched just in recent years with just how intense that was and how high level that was. They beat Cincinnati twice. They beat Charlotte. They beat NYC. They beat Orlando. They beat Chicago twice. But they didn't have a win against Nashville, Miami, or Columbus. And they played well against Miami in both of those games. They handled like DC and Atlanta and New England and all those teams. So again, I don't want it to be Negadelphia, but the reality of the situation is that they could have used another quality win to just help the narrative surrounding like what was this team. If they had won that season finale against Charlotte, 2 wins against Charlotte, 2 wins against Cincy, 69 points. That's easier for me to sell than 66 points with one fewer quality win, But to your point, last thing I think that I have on this kind of the thin fixture list, man, was huge because they just had the Open Cup and they had domestic play, man. Miami played in the Champions League. They played in the Club World Cup. Played in the Leagues Cup. Went all the way to the final with that. I think Miami played like 15 more games than the Union did this year.
Feels that way, yeah.
Seattle and LAFC were there too. So that was a benefit for them. But Bradley Carnell played it very well. This is the Ray Gaddis rule that we have on the podcast. Where if you're gonna say something negative, then you say something positive, right? Because we want to keep it balanced. Yes, the Union were given an easier hand this year with the fixture list. But they played it perfectly. They rotated the hell out of the squad. They kept the guys fresh. They went 18 deep, 19 deep. They had Marcus Anderson scoring big goals. That stretch where they went unbeaten, man. No, they really pressed all the right buttons. And so that's, again, going to my thing with more than one thing can be true is they got a great path, but they did the most with it.
The thing that kills me the most, and this is a little unrelated, but also part of this thin schedule, is just how advantageous that U.S. Open Cup schedule was for them too, right? To have 2 games, I guess, against USL teams. Granted, one of them was the eventual USL champion in Pittsburgh, but to get Pittsburgh Riverhounds, to get Indy 11, to get the New York Red Bulls, who are still trying to figure out what their identity is this year after having an incredible season the year before. And I don't think that there's really any shame in losing to Nashville, considering that, all that Nashville really had to play for in the regular season was that, right? Because once you qualify or, you're one of those top 9 teams or whatever, top however many teams, 60% of the league makes it.
Yeah.
Sure, you're jockeying for positioning, but whatever. Like you're focusing on that. That U.S. Open Cup run, man, was so friendly to them that it could have been, an even more positive conversation between you and I right now if they would have won the Supporters Shield, if they would have won U.S. Open Cup, and they would have farted this. Whatever, they had this loss against New York City at home in the playoffs. I think we would have I don't want to say completely different conversation, but maybe a slightly more positive one if they had 2 pieces of silverware instead of a single one. That, sure, the uneven schedule, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, and especially too, because that is a competition where they've gotten to the final before and it's just eluded them, to finally, that was a perfect path for them to finally get it done and they just couldn't do it. But I think let me ask you this as an exercise, sort of tangentially. I think in order, if you have 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, if you have 5 trophies that you can win in a year, I think in order of easiest to hardest to win, I would say U.S. Open Cup's easiest. Actually, it's only 4 because now if you're in the Open Cup, you're not in the Leagues Cup. But Open Cup, Leagues Cup, you have to win the fewest games to win the trophy, right? So put those at the bottom. Then I think it's I don't know, man. I don't. Do you think it's easier to win the Shield or win MLS Cup?
I think it's easy. Oh shit. I don't want to
See, it's
forget
tough
about I don't want to
because
forget about CONCACAF actually, because I think that's an
that's
incredibly tough competition.
I think the hardest one
Okay.
to win is the Champions League. But I
Yes.
can make an argument for the Shield or MLS Cup because the Shield you have to have consistent excellency over the longer period of time, but you may benefit from a weaker schedule. MLS Cup, you don't have to win as many games, but you got to play the best of the best. Red Bull went to the final last year
Yeah.
and nobody thought anything of them, right? So that win would have been just a classic, the Flyers and the Canadians 15 years ago as a 7 seed versus the 8 seed, and then the miracle run to the final, right? I don't, that's what that would have
Yeah.
been. So I don't, I think it's easier to win the Shield just barely, and then MLS Cup, and then Champions League at the top. So I think if
I,
the
I
Union
agree with
have
that.
won the Union, if you're looking at if you're looking at it as like a slope, and you're going to be a title winning team or a team that wins trophies, where do you start? You win an Open Cup, prove that you can win an Open Cup, then maybe you win a Leagues Cup or get to the final of the Leagues Cup or semifinal like the Union have, and then the Shield and MLS Cup are kind of right there. I think that's probably reasonable.
It kills me. It kills me. It kills me. It kills me. I would love for Philadelphia. It made me actually quite sad to not have any CONCACAF this year. Just because I appreciate and this is me pulling the brown person card, so forgive me, Kevin, but like I absolutely love the culture side of things with the CONCACAF Champions Cup, right? To see the Costa Ricans, to see the Central American teams, the Mexican teams
Oh yeah,
come to
I love the
oh
fentanyl jokes from the Atlas fans.
I still remember that Club America match when they came to Subaru Park and that entire thing was yellow. That
Oh
was
yeah,
unfucking believable, man.
yeah.
Like what Philadelphia could be if the league didn't I hate to call it a genuine job, but a better job, I guess, and as a whole to attract the average Spanish speaking person. Like that's
Yeah.
exactly what it could be. So like I have a huge affinity for the CONCACAF Champions Cup, but you got to take care of these domestic trophies to be able to say that you belong there. So I totally get it. Like you have no
Yeah,
business
listen,
playing against Cruz Azul or Pachuca unless you can figure out how to win the fucking U.S. Open Cup at some point.
listen, man, I'm as white as it gets, and I love the CONCACAF Champions League too. It doesn't get much whiter than Boyertown, as you well know. But yeah, I mean the playing teams that you don't normally play and having those fans of the stadium. Dave and I used to dream of the day when the Union would play somebody like a Saprissa or something. Now they've played them twice in the Champions League. I'm like, well, what a long, strange trip this has been, as the Grateful Dead once said. So sorry, my phone
Yeah.
was ringing. Sorry, my phone was ringing. That was the Sixers PR telling everybody that somebody's injured and won't come back into the game.
Paul George gonna go record.
No, it's Trendon Watford with a left adductor strain, not abductor, but adductor. So
Yeah.
usually about, what is it, 9:30? This is usually about the time you get a text from the Sixers PR team telling everybody who's injured and won't return to the game. It's NBA Cup action tonight, by the way.
The Emirates Cup, right? Is that what it's called? Is it the Emirates?
Are they still calling it that? I don't fucking know. I start paying attention once we get past Thanksgiving here. It's still Eagles o'clock in the Kincaid household. Now I got to work on Black Friday too. So
You're a busy man.
at least that'll prevent. At least I'll be at home and I won't be getting trampled at Walmart. So yeah. Listen, man. I don't. This was a huge accomplishment for them. They were a great team. Nothing can take that away. They handled business. They did not get thumped by anybody other than Vancouver, and that was kind of a weird one. I can't say enough positive things about just how much buy-in and just effort and determination they played with every night. I know it just sounds stupid. There's nothing that you and I can really analyze when it comes to that. Well, they just played harder, but they did. And whatever Bradley Carnell said to these guys in the offseason, I mean, they bought all the way the fuck in. There weren't any games where they were out there dogging it. or moping around or showing bad body language, other than like maybe a couple Ty Baribo moments here and there. But these guys were dogs all year long, and they earned it, and they, the objective is to get the most points in the league, and they got the most points, so they get the damn trophy, But I think when I look at it from afar now, I think at the very top, I think everybody would agree that the 2022 Philadelphia Union are the best team ever in franchise history, even though they won nothing, but they should have. And then I think it's really a tie between this team and the 2020 team. I would love these two teams to play each other. But with the shortened COVID thing, we didn't get to see them play a lot of different teams. And the point total is going to be different anyway. So listen, I mean, they win a trophy. Nothing can take that away from them. And it just gave everybody some renewed vigor, I think, to say that, like, okay, that was just a blip last year, and some of these guys like Kai and Jacob and Dre and whoever still have something left in the tank. And as long as Ernst Tanner's here, which he may not be, but we'll see. But as long as he's here, they're going to be competitive. So I think that was more refreshing than anything, which I guess would segue us into that topic. If you're living under a rock and not aware, Pablo Maurer at writing for The Guardian published a deep dive sort of outlining accusations that Ernst Tanner made racist and sexist and homophobic comments going back, I guess, over the entirety of his tenure here, right? 7 years, is that what it said?
About that, yeah.
Yeah, and there was the Cliff's Notes here is that there was an investigation by the league. They were unable to corroborate, really prove these allegations. The union had their own kind of HR internal handling of it. Basically, I think what amounted to sort of like a sensitivity training, if I was reading correctly. Is that a fair summation? Am I like accurate here with this? I'm trying to remember this whole thing off the top of my head. I think that's really what it was. But as a result, as a result of Pablo's story, they've reopened the investigation, and Ernst is currently on administrative leave. So I'll toss it to you, man. I mean, where are you on this whole thing right now?
I think I would start off by saying that seeing some of the comments of people who it's not lost on me that I work a very cushy job, right? I work in academia for a top liberal arts college full time. So like, it's not lost on me that I'm fortunate in that way. Yeah, very snobby. Believe me, super snobby. Love the people there, but super snobby. I do sensitivity training on a yearly basis. Right. We do a ton of trainings throughout the year for this, for that, hazing, et cetera, mandated reporting, whatever. So when the reporting came out from Pablo and the amount of people that were confused of why is this even necessary? Is that just, is that something that happens only when you do something wrong? It's like, well, no, actually it happens every single time. I've never touched anybody. I've never done anything like that before. And I still have to do the training. So that's the one thing I would share right away. Yeah. But this report is obviously allegations as it stands, right? I think right now what Ernst is going through is just the court of public opinion more than anything. And if the reporting is right and Pablo goes ahead and is absolutely right, because he has to cross his T's and dot his I's about this entire report because it's pretty damning. This is career ending for potentially somebody. You got to make sure you get it right. And if he did, that means that the first go around about this all did come back as, weren't able to corroborate the report. So we'll see if they're able to this time around. In the spirit of not sounding like a sexist, a racist, or a misogynist, like, nobody deserves whatever is being allocated here at a workplace, right? You never want that for anybody to go into work and not feel comfortable with someone who is being potentially like that. So I hope that it's false, man, because I think about how much this guy has done for the team over the many years. And sure, everybody has a way of getting things done or a way of operating, whatever, especially with cultural differences. That I would hate for his legacy to go down with this. If anything, I would also argue that this supporter shield and everybody behind it, from scouting, performance, health and wellness, grounds, Carnell himself, etc., everybody's being overshadowed by this report, especially with the timing of it all. So I must admit, I had heard some rumblings of some of this stuff that apparently had happened at some point or another, but I don't have the time or budget to spend a whatever 6-7 month of reporting cycle to try to get it right. And frankly, I think it's for folks like Pablo to follow more than me. So I don't know. I wonder what this means for him. I wonder what this means for ownership if something or the reporting comes out to be true. I'm just super interested to see and honestly move on from it, right? Just figure it out and let's just figure out what this season off season looks like here in the coming months.
So I think the key thing at the top here is with the investigation reopened. The question I have is what rhetorically really is what would it take for MLS to act on this? Because if they've already investigated it and they haven't been able to corroborate, what changes this time around? Do 15 more people come out and say I heard this or I was the victim of that or whatever? And if they do, can they prove those allegations? Right? Because still, I mean, people like to use this term credibly accused, which I think became popular at the height of cancel culture maybe a couple years ago. And while there may be something to that phrase and that line of thinking, it's just not something that would ever hold up in a court of law, right? I mean, I think the burden of proof, fortunate or unfortunate, is still on the accuser to burnish proof to say that this I can say definitively and prove that this actually happened, right? So I just think procedurally that's the obstacle there for sure. The stuff that's in the story about the African players and the homophobic comments stuff, you can't say that shit, man. And I'm everybody knows I'm the least woke person on the planet, and I've stepped in the shit plenty of times before, and I've been here personally too, and there are people who have been shit canned and fired for much less. So I think when you talk about, it's a classic case, even like old American guys here 4 or 5 years ago when this was kind of at its height, you talk about, well, older dudes just have a different perspective on things. They call women hun and they put their arm around them or whatever. I'm like, well, all right, well, I get it, but it's not 1972 anymore, and just things have changed, and I just think it's strange, if the allegations about the African guys and whatever are true, that's just so bizarre to me that you could be signing African players and having them on your team or whatever and saying this shit at the same time, allegedly. So I think if there was proof of this stuff, I that's just a long way of me saying if this stuff is proved, I do think the offenses are fireable. I'm kind of curious to get your take on this. I think the union fan base, I think that Major League Soccer and a lot of the large fan bases in MLS are more, I hate to keep using the word, I wish there was a better word, but I'll use woke, right? There's just more, I think if this happened in Portland, Ernst would have been fired already. It's a large, progressive, liberal fan base with large progressive liberal place. And I think that their fans would have went after the front office and they would have had to act on it. I don't think the union fan base is like that. And for the people who are progressive and really think that the union should act on this, I don't know if those voices are loud enough to really to affect anything one way or another. I mean, the Sons of Ben last year, as an example, 2 years ago, I guess, they had the whole thing with the Roe versus Wade kerfuffle where it was like, why didn't you guys have a
shit? That's right.
Make a statement about Roe versus Wade, right? And that whole thing resulted in Matt Gandasic resigning. And it's like, well, and I think everybody kind of knows that KSU and SOB, there's some, careful what I say here. There's some split based on social, cultural, political beliefs. Is that fair? So there's been, the reason I bring that up is because I think there's been kind of a soul searching kind of within the Sons of Ben and the larger fan base to determine what are we? Are we fans? Are we a political group? Do we get into social issues or whatever? And I think if that had resulted in more of a robust, we're all going to stand together for progressive politics and doing the right thing and morality and all this stuff, then you'd see a large concerted effort to get Ernst fired. But I don't see that.
Yeah, Kevin, I'm often reminded by people that I work with, that I collaborate with, that I speak with, just as, different aspects of my life, that the internet and social media are not a true reflection of real life. Because I think you and I can agree that um, the social media fan base that's active, and now it's even split further, right? Between Twitter, between Blue Sky, between Reddit, and the next and Facebook, whatever,
Yeah.
are so different than the average suburban mom who drives a Tahoe with 7 kids from soccer practice twice or 3 times a year for 3 games that the kids soccer club is being sponsored and are going to get their name on the board. And that's the only time that they show up. Right. Like I'm describing a very specific group, and that's where the union make their lunch with some crazy pricing for those people. They know how to do it. So I guess I share that to say that social media is not a real world, and the reality is that it's you're right. If this was a Seattle or San Diego, Los Angeles, etc., LA, it would be a completely different conversation. So I guess where I would put a pin on it all is that, and this is the most political statement I'll ever make in terms of my stance on this, I just want the investigation to happen, whether it's proven right that it did happen, that he did all these things, or it's proven that they can't corroborate it, that there's at least an answer so the man can go on with his life, and that fans and reporters and everybody that's involved with the club can just go on. And I just hope that it's swift, it's thorough, and it's accurate, because the last thing you want is for this to, at least for me anyways, I would hate for this to pop up for a third time, right? Just do it once, do it right.
Yeah, you gotta act. I mean, like,
yeah.
Right. I mean, now's the time, like, you gotta make a definitive, is this guy gonna continue here? Is he not gonna continue here?
Now, what I will say, Kevin, is that the timing is so interesting to me, and I haven't really talked about this too publicly with people, but even in that piece, and I think you can follow with me here, in that piece, they mentioned that they asked Chris Albright for comment, and he declined to comment. But I would think that there's another person that Pablo would want to talk to that worked very closely with Ernst Tanner.
Listen,
and there was no declining of comment.
I told somebody straight up, and this is just me spitballing here, I don't have any facts to prove or disprove this, but obviously people are like, well, surely Jim talked, right?
Right.
I think it's more, I don't see Jim as like the vengeful, I'm gonna go out and like fuck you kind of person.
Of course.
I think, though, hypothetically speaking, if somebody else brought this to Pablo, or he had a sniff of it and was working on it, and then he went to Jim about it, I think Jim would be inclined to talk at that point. But I don't think it would have been like, I don't think Jim Curtin went to Pablo Maurer and was like, I got some shit for you, right? Because you hear these things from a lot of different people at the same time. It's oftentimes like a groundswell of like chatter that comes from multiple different people, It's not often when you're in the news breaking business that you get one hot lead from one person. You kind of hear a lot of chatter, and then that informs whether you're going to chase a story or whether you're going to let a story go. But sure, I mean, it's completely plausible that Jim spoke to him. I don't know that for a fact, of course, but I think the reason that he would have mentioned I guess the question is, why did he mention Albright by name, right, but not Jim or anybody else? I guess because Albright was in the front office, like working closely with him on player personnel stuff. Is that our guess, right? I mean, that he would have been within earshot of him more often than the head coach or whatever.
That's my guess, right? And I'm just trying to deduct. Okay, well, there's a comment. There's a declining of comment by this one person, but no mention of another person that worked hand in hand. I like to think, even if the relationship was fractured, as Tom Bogert and even Pablo reported a couple of years back, right? You don't have to go much further to see that. With all due respect to Pablo, like, a couple of days before the whole, and you remember this, the whole Alejandro Bedoya, Ernst Tanner only gave me 30 seconds to tell me that I wasn't, part of the plans and whatever. A couple of days earlier, Pablo Maurer had posted a picture on Instagram with him at Rainey Street with Subaru Park in front of him. So it's like, okay, man,
Yeah.
like you're kind of telegraphing what you're doing here. But
I wonder if people see these things the way that you and I do, I mean, looking for these little clues and stuff,
I think it's almost to a flaw, man. Like I wish I didn't think about it too much, because I was reading this story and I'm like, this seems off. And again,
you're like, this sounds like this person. This sounds like, yeah.
And you can just hear it in what's the phrase, Kevin? Like the English is escaping me right now, but like in your mind's eye or like in your mind's ear, you kind of like read comments or in quotes or like,
yeah,
it doesn't sound like him, or that absolutely sounds like this one person that I've heard speak through a speaker or whatever or in front of me and talking to a microphone for however many times. So it's neither here or there. I guess to kind of move on from it. I hope it's thorough. I hope it's decided. I must admit, I do wonder if this truly, if Ernst is to be ousted, based on things that I had heard from different sources, this sort of sped up his exit by a little bit, not too much. I had heard rumblings from one person specifically that he was going to leave after the World Cup anyways. So it's kind of like, okay, like now or after the 2026 season. Again, that's just one person. I couldn't corroborate. I didn't report on it because I I still work off the old school. I need 3 people or 2 people, unless it's the very, Ernst himself telling me.
You can do 2 if one of them's really good.
Right. So, and maybe I'm too old school because I typically go for 3 because I'm an idiot.
No, and in the social media age, a lot of people don't do that anymore, but
yeah. So I wonder if this just accelerates things a little bit. And again, man, the timing is so interesting for this story in terms of, sure, the playoff picture, etc. But if anything, the Union are super fortunate to, and segue, maybe have already made some of these decisions in terms of options as well as bona fide offers for.
Oh, they already have.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Because I was thinking of that. I'm like, well, is Ernst like technically working, or is he at home with his laptop and not allowed to email anybody? But they've already, of course. I mean, the Indy Vasilev contract extension was announced today. I mean, these things are usually decided months in advance, as you well know. It's not like they were going to get together and sit down tonight and be like, all right, are we going to extend Chris Donovan? I think they know what the fuck they're going to do with Chris Donovan at this point. And if they don't, then, that would be a question. But for the last part of this topic, let me go like full WIP here. This might be a kind of a shitty thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think the worst case scenario here for the Union is if Ernst gets fired, but Jay Sugarman stays. Because what are you with Jay Sugarman but no Ernst Tanner? You're an bang average team like you are. I mean, you can go find another guy who can kind of do a Red Bull homegrown academy kind of thing. The academy will keep pumping out players, but I mean, Ernst Tanner hit on like 90% of his signings, right? So I think losing him would be a huge blow. The reason I bring Jay into it is because you could really make an argument, if you wanted to, that now twice, if he does get fired, during his ownership, they've had some kind of scandal like this where a coach or a player personnel executive or somebody was, having these gross violations behind the scene. The Peter Novak stuff with the hazing and like denying the guys water and all that shit, that ended in disgrace for him, really. And now this happens again. I mean, I don't know if the league would look at that and say, okay, there's a pattern here of, this guy not having control of his franchise. There's other stuff, of course. There's typical HR stuff that wasn't reported, things with employees here or there. But I don't know, I don't know how far it goes beyond Ernst. I don't even know if Jay, to be honest with you, really would have any clue what the hell is going on, since he's up in New York and he's still an absentee kind of guy. I honestly don't know if he knew any of this about Ernst Tanner or not. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But I just think like looking forward, whether Ernst gets justifiably fired or not, or the stuff is corroborated or not corroborated, a union going forward with Ernst Tanner is a much worse franchise. And the one way that you could salvage that would be to get the owner out at the same time. And I'm not going to like sit here and be like, I'm going to bang the drum and lead the charge and write all the stories that Jay Sugarman must go too. But I do wonder if the league considers that at all and says like, we got to get control of this franchise. That's just sort of my, not tinfoil hat, but kind of conspiracy theory kind of, taking it way out of bounds thing,
Outside of congratulating the man on a supporter shield this year and the occasional hello and him thanking me for reporting, etc. When I run into him when he goes into the suites and I go up to the peasants garage door press box
with all the plebes up there.
Yeah. When outside of that, man, I've never talked to the man, so I can't speak for him. What I will say is that I don't know that the union's value in terms of a franchise, and I'm thinking of like the reports that Sportico make and et cetera of evaluations for the franchises, et cetera. I don't think it's quite yet baked in the World Cup. So I wonder if there's him specifically waiting for 2026 to come and go to say, okay, this is as high as I'm going to get in terms of my value for this franchise before I start splintering the soul of my ownership stake with other people. I can imagine that right now his head is honestly just on whether or not the SAFE safe stock is high or low, because that's his main part of income. But yeah, I don't know if MLS steps in and says anything considering the circumstances. And I would go ahead and venture to say that, much like you, I can't imagine he had any idea that any of this was happening, because he puts people into place to deal with this shit. You and I know C-suite level people that have no fucking clue what's going on.
Exactly. It's totally plausible. And I don't think that you can make that kind of connection. I think the reason that I brought that up was just to say, like, exploring scenarios, if they lose Ernst, it's going to suck for them, but you could salvage it a little bit by trying to force the owner out at the same time, whether it's justified or not, because they'd be in a better shape if they did that. Because as long as Jay is here, their ceiling really is just money, is just German Red Bull moneyball. They're not going to play any other winning style.
It's not even that, Kevin, because I think if you look at how cheap they bought that land and how much they've built on it, that field house that has come in, I haven't stepped in there. I've seen plenty of pictures of it in the inside. I've seen obviously quite a bit of it from the outside. That alone, man, the value of what he bought versus what he could be selling, it's unfucking believable. Like I don't talk with a lot of people that get the economics of it all, right? This is a man who bought land for pennies on the dollar in the Chester on the banks of the Delaware, and turned it into this massive thing. And there's always the conversation of when's the team going to move to the complex, etc. It's like, you'd be fucking dumb to think that this dude even wants to think about that, because of how much he's developed on it for dirt cheap, turning it into massive piles of money for whenever it's time for him to pick the hammer, hit the glass, and exit.
Yeah, and they've got a long time left on the lease too, if I remember. But it's funny with all that stuff. I wish I could have got more into that when I was quote unquote on the beat, because we're all just part time. There's no full time soccer jobs in Philadelphia other than JT, and he's got responsibilities that go outside of the union. But like, for example, they bought the land from guys who are in the ownership group now.
Yeah,
right? I mean, Buccini and Pollen are still in ownership, right? Yeah, so
I believe so. Yeah.
They've already made a ton of money off that investment, and the value just keeps going up and up and up. I just think, like, you hit the ceiling with this is what you're going to have to, with the resources that they have and the style that they like, as a club, German moneyball is probably going to be the best you can do. And you have this dude who's a friggin' wizard right now. So If he goes, he goes. And if they find that these allegations are true, then I think he should go. But it's going to suck if he does. So, all right. Segueing. Speaking of who should stay and who should go, let me just go over the contracts real quick here. So the guys who are out of contract, are Ty Baribo, Mikel Ua, Jan Glavinovic, Nate Harriel, Awetu Mukanya, Chris Donovan, Ben Bender, George Marks, Ali Bedoya, and Nick Pariano. Obviously, Indy Vassilev got a new contract. No issues with that one, honestly, because I don't think, if Quinn Sullivan hadn't torn his ACL, I don't think Indy would have even been starting in the playoffs and would have been probably one of the first guys off the bench. What do you do with Ty, man? What do you do with Ty?
Not basing it off of any sourcing or conversations.
Yeah, what do you have? Spill the fucking beans, Nunez.
I think he's gone. I can imagine that after the season that he's had, or I guess the 2 years that he's had, now that he's finally played and scored a hell of a lot in such a short span. And I know it's come in spurts of just, 6 goals here, nothing here, and then a whole bunch here. I think you go ahead and spring the option, I think you sell him. I think that there's a lot of
option. It's a club option for 1 year. Sorry.
Yeah, so I think there's probably an understanding, and in talking with people who have been around the team in the past, you don't want to hold, and they use this term, which was kind of new to me, in a golden cage, right? In terms of, we're gonna spring this option on you, whether you want it or not. You're gonna stick with us, the way that they did, I guess. PSG did with someone like Verratti back in the day, where they just held him in this place with no desire to actually want to be there. I don't think you do that for any MLS player, because agents talk. It's you're gonna make yourself non persona grata as a club to bring new players in. I think Ty Baribo's gone. I think this is when you go ahead and get the max value for someone like him. An Israeli international who is scoring domestically a ton of goals. And they are bringing, as I understand, I don't know that the deal's done yet, but that Ezekiel Alado guy, that is, by all accounts, from what I'm hearing from sources, that he's gonna tear it up here. And completely different player than him, just a ball of muscle at 6'3", 6'4". So I think this was the farewell for Baribo, and I'm not even sure how happy he was after the game on Sunday. I think he may have jet out of the stadium pretty quickly.
He got pulled. Yeah, well, it's funny too when the reports came out, when you guys and everybody else was talking about the Alado guy. I was laughing when I read it, because I'm like, I've never even fucking heard of this team before in Sweden or wherever it was, but I've also watched Ernst pull dudes out of like Spartak Subotica, and they go on to be starters out here. So in Ernst, we trust, I think you got you got a logjam at striker anyway. I think one of the wild cards here is well, do they let's use a British, I'll do my British, do they fancy Iloski as a winger or a forward? Because Carnell loves Damiani and he's under contract. Ua looks like he's probably gone, even though he did some good things for them this year and stretching the field and being like a Sebastian Latou kind of straight line runner. But yeah, I mean, they've got, bodies there. And, they're going to have to shuffle some of these guys out. Harriel, they'll pick up his option. McConaughey, they'll pick up his option. Chris Donovan, they can let go of. Bender doesn't have to come back. Ali obviously has the front office thing. And Glavinovic is just a loan ends, and they have the purchase option. So that's
so with Glavinovic, actually, Kev, with Glavinovic, that contract was terminated ahead of the release of the roster. So that dude's been gone since September. So the one thing I will say is, and this is, I think, not really thought about too much by people in the press, and this is just me, my hunch. I haven't heard anything or talked to anybody. I wonder if the injury to Quinn is sort of a blessing in disguise for Philadelphia, where, he becomes the Jordan Morris of Philadelphia, a guy who injures himself in such a way that he's not as valuable abroad and becomes an MLSer for life. Whereas,
yeah, if you could, if they could get like a Jordan Morris or a if we could have one of our like the Philly Roldan or like a Graham Zusi or whatever, because like all these like homegrown American kids, they go elsewhere eventually. I mean, Ali Bedoya, even though he didn't come from here, I mean, it's the closest thing you had to like a U.S. international quality player who has been here for a long time. For sure, man, it would be good to have one of those guys. Yeah, that's a good way to. That's a good take from you.
Yeah, well,
I like that.
I think the Quinn Sullivan thing sort of gives him a little more of like, okay, well, he's on a U22 deal that's eventually going to run out. The injury makes him so tough to sell in, say, the summer or once the market shifts to be what it's going to be with the schedule change. But that was one thought I had looking at this name, at these names specifically. But I think I agree with you. I think Alejandro Bedoya becomes an ambassador the way that Latu became. I think Mikel Ua is gone. Ben Bender is gone. George Marks is gone. Olwethu Mikanya, I think you even restructure his contract and give him a longer deal than options through 27. Ty Baribo's gone. Chris Donovan's gone. Nate Harriel, I think you restructure his contract because I think that there are a ton of players that are actually making more money than him, considering what he can provide.
Do you
Oliver
see
Semla,
real quick? I'm sorry, real quick. Do you see Harriel's 24 now? Do you see him having an overseas future?
And nothing against the guy. I don't know him personally, but if he was to go abroad, I could see it becoming the tale of an Anthony Fontana in terms of going abroad, not having a great experience, and then having to retreat back to play USL in the future. Not that there's anything wrong with that, because obviously I'm just an idiot sitting in my basement speaking about soccer. So I personally don't see it.
I also think he's sorry. I mean, I also think that positionally he's a tweener. I don't think he's a natural right back. I also don't think he's a natural center back. I think the best place that you would play him, honestly, is if you played a 3-5-2 or something, and you played with right center backs and left center backs, where you'd have like a thumper in the middle, and then he'd play on the right, but there would be a wing back outside of him, which would alleviate some of his offensive responsibility, but he would be able to get up in patches. I just don't see him as like he's a really, really good athlete and great in the air. And I see him as like an RCB ceiling. Since he's kind of moved back and forth between the spots here. I don't know, like if you're a European scout or whatever, or where you see him play on the youth national team, like, I don't know if that does anything for you.
The worst thing that happened to him is that Frankie Westfield became so good, MLNX Pro, and then this tournament in the U20 World Cup just even propelled them to a different stratosphere with how good he is. I'm actually more worried about Frankie Westfield being an international product than I am for Nate Harriel.
Yeah.
Because again, the worst thing that happened to Nate Harriel outside of Frankie Westfield was to go to the Olympics and not really feature that much.
And he got a little bit of the Ray Gaddis kind of treatment, where because you have this utility and you can go play like left back or deputize in a bunch of different spots, you end up being a Swiss Army knife instead of like you're above average in a bunch of spots, but you're not elite in any one spot. It's like you're a Philadelphia Phillies infielder of 10 years ago, but it's my second cross-sport reference of the night, But
the one name I feel bad for in this list is not bad. He's obviously a professional player. He's making money playing ball, whether he's actually playing or not. But Oliver Senla, man, he went from backup to being tossed into the spotlight of Philadelphia Union Soccer to then having to retreat once again to USL to now recently with North Carolina FC folding.
Yeah.
Having to retreat back to MLS, and I can't imagine they pick up their contract. And I had heard rumblings, again, nothing that I can fully report, but I had heard that part of the loan was that he had a deal to be part of North Carolina's roster full time. So sort of yeah, you can go on loan. We'll decline your offer, and you'll be a full time USL player. But obviously, North Carolina is folding operations for the year, so he's only getting 2 months severance from that team. So again, if that does become true, that's a tough stretch for a guy who was at the top of the world playing for Louisville and doing so well in USL a couple of years back. Just a tough stretch for the dude.
The guys who are out of contract then at the end of next year: Kai Wagner, Danley Jean-Jacques, Jovan Lukic, Olivier Bizo, Jesus Bueno, Andre Blake, Jeremy Raffanello, and Marcus Anderson. So I mean, your forwards are all, your forwards are locked up. I mean, Ilosky, what's Ilosky's contract? I don't even know what he's here next year. That's all that matters, Yeah, I mean, they got some decisions to make, but I think a lot of these are pretty identifiable. I mean, they don't at least they're not trying to negotiate with Kyle Schwarber or trying to figure out how many tens of millions of dollars, some guy, whether they should extend them to age 40 or whatever, So
if you were to ask me who to buy a jersey for out of that secondary list that you mentioned of 2027 contracts, I would not buy a Danley Jean-Jacques jersey. I can't imagine he sticks around.
He was kind of one of he's going to go to the World Cup with Haiti.
Yeah.
By the way, can I say something really stupid? Well, no,
not it's your show.
Not to be that guy, but journalists love stories as much as anybody, feel good stories, and you see a lot of like with the World Cup qualifying. Oh, teams going to their first World Cup ever, or they're going to the first World Cup in 25 years or whatever, They wouldn't be if the field wasn't expanded.
I don't disagree with you.
I don't mean to shit on good stories, but it's like it's almost like when like the NFL writers were like, this guy only needs 15 more yards to break the so-and-so's record. I'm like, well, he's playing 17 games and this dude played 14 games. So
it's the same way I feel about my beloved Bolivia, right? Like they're benefiting from an expanded field because of the intercontinental tournament, which again, like I am just in awe that there's an opportunity where Bolivia will have to face Jamaica at some point to make it to the World Cup. And holy shit, like what a moment for someone like me who is so deep into this Philadelphia Union stuff and just seeing my worlds collide in a way. So
I'm not trying to shit on good stories. I'm just an asterisk guy. I just like to make sure we're understanding the full context of all these things. It'd be nice to see some different teams in the tournament though,
I hear you.
Because the World Cup at times it turns into like Argentina and Brazil versus the Euros. It's like a glorified Euro, but
dude, I feel bad for the person in, I guess most people really at this point, the person in, Seattle that just paid $400 for a nosebleed ticket without knowing what teams are going to play, or this person might get New Caledonia against Yemen for all we know.
Cabo Verde. Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this World Cup shakes out. But to Danley's credit, the dude balled out, and I think has if anything, I'm surprised that the Union were able to draw him out of a French team that was relegated for the price that they did.
That's the only reason. I mean, that team was just shit. Isn't that an Ernst Tanner thing? Like, I see an opportunity that's shit, I'm gonna take advantage of it.
If I'm at any MLS team, dude, like I'm looking at any team that's being relegated in a shitty league, not shitty league, but like in a French league, for example, that needs money, because if I recall, the French league finished its TV rights third game into the season this past season or last year, I can't remember. So like a lot of these teams are in dire need for money, never mind those that don't really get the parachute money to fall into the second division. So yeah, they're gonna sell Danley at a steep discount. So yeah, that's where you make your bread and butter.
Yeah, it'll be 26 by that point. It's probably the time to go back to Europe, or it might pass you by. I can't imagine like after the age of 27 anybody wanting to bring him back over there. But Well, we'll see. Maybe Ernst is secretly. Maybe Ernst Tanner is like the guy who gets ejected from the game, and so he goes sits in the stands and he's like texting the coach what formation to play or whatever. Decline Donovan's option. By the way, I just
a la Javier Mascherano when he got booted out and he was talking via his AirPods to the coach just 2 rows behind him.
Right. Do you think what do you think will happen first? MLS will finish its Ernst Tanner investigation, or Lane Kiffin will tell us whether he's staying at Ole Miss or not?
God, when's MLS final? December 6th? I don't think we get an answer until
a
random Friday right before Christmas. Yeah.
Well, we'll look for Kalshi odds. Use promo code BROAD to sign up and start trading now. We kind of touched on this like in some of the other discussion, but I just have this thought that as long as they're playing German Red Bull car crash moneyball, I just don't think they can win anything other than the Open Cup or the Leagues Cup or the Shield. That might sound stupid to say since they went to MLS Cup and were, had a lead late not that long ago. But I think that team was a little bit more skilled and special and wasn't just a group of interchangeable Red Bull parts. But, as long as they're going to spend what they're going to spend and I think the one thing that did bother me about the New York game, now that I think about it, is that I like in the second half, I was looking for somebody on the field to kind of be a leader, kind of like take control of it and get the guys like settled down and or somebody just to like step up and make a play. Miami's got Messi. That's a shitty comparison, but San Diego with a guy like Dreyer, like you look around and you got a team of Red Bull grinders. It's like, who's got to step up and make a special play here? When your team first, turnover transitional game isn't really working, where do you go? And so I just don't think I think they've reached a ceiling with, the spending and the style and whatever. And if the ceiling is winning the Supporters Shield, do that 5 times in a row and everybody would be happy. I don't think anybody would complain about that, but I don't know if they can win MLS Cup with this approach. And, I think ownership's probably fine with that, because they're winning games, they're filling up the place and they're making money. But I just think stylistically, this is the only thing that you can really play for a Jay Sugarman administration. Is that a hot take?
I don't think it's a hot take. I think it's a realistic take where I might, Riso of mine may defer a little bit on this, is the fact that they've got, and you said it, you came right out of your lips, they've come mighty close in 2022. And they've obviously been winning things since 2020, let alone this season where they really put their shoulder into this style of play. To even go back to the end of 2024 where Ernst Tanner, or I guess, whatever, the presentation of Bradley Cornell. I still remember being in just about the attic of my wife's aunt in South Carolina when Bradley Cornell was being presented and listening to Ernst Tanner say, we kind of went away from our ways with Jim. It's time to bring it back to, this style of play where 70% of our goals will come this way, 30% from this other way, 20 from the next, and whatever. That
can I just say real quickly on that, and then I'll let you finish the thought. But I thought it was so just telling. It was so apropos when Ernst, I think it was in a backheeled story that's behind a paywall, but last year he said that Jim's final year, they kind of regressed into a boring possession style,
I remember that piece. Yeah, I think it was
the ball and pass the ball. It's like we've had discussion a million times on the podcast. I was a center back. I was a defensive mid. I love banging into people and winning the ball and playing, defensive stuff as much as anybody. And I got so fucking sick of watching Spanish tiki-taka around 2014 that I was like, let's get it back to the Irish teams of the 90s where they just kick and chase like the Flyers do now. So I've always thought balls. I've always thought that there's beauty in physicality or whatever. But let's not act like car crash Red Bull football is aesthetically pleasing. When they jar the ball loose and get on the break and whatever, they had some skill this year. They did some really, really nice things, and these weren't just like meatheads out there. But the fact that Ernst thinks that possession is boring is like, just he really believes this shit. He's a guy who sticks to his convictions.
And maybe that's the role of analytics, right? Where I don't know if I missed it all throughout the season or it was something that was genuinely instituted towards the later stages of the season, but they started doing the Union started doing the fucking PSG thing of trying to kick it out of bounds, right, for a throw in the upper
Dude,
left.
I
The most
I can't believe
anti-soccer fucking thing possible.
I know. I can't believe I failed to mention this until now, but the very first sequence of the playoff game, uh, was it Olaski who just lifted it up and he just kicked the ball straight into the air, and I'm like, I had two thoughts. I was like, this is the dumbest, most Union fucking thing ever. And then I paused and I'm like, well, this is what PSG does every game. They're one of the best teams in the world. It's just so ridiculous that we're at a point where we're like, just give the other team the ball and try to make them, turn it over like it's friggin' hot potato that we're playing on here. The teams of like Xavi and Iniesta and
They
Busquets
cringe.
and Dani Alves, they would have been rolling in their graves whenever they get there, So
I think of those, Kevin, and you remember these oh so well from 20. I guess it would have been like 2000 and between 2006 and 2010. That whole campaign that Nike had with the Joga Bonito and all of these like beautiful soccer, beautiful play, putting the Brazilian national team, all that shit. This is the antithesis of that, right? Of just booted to the corner.
I was so annoyed. I was so annoyed with Spain and Barcelona and the false nine and the 4-2-3-1 false nine, like the 4-6-0 or whatever they put. Just put a fucking striker on the field. I'm like, you've got David Villa on the team. Just put him on just put a damn striker. If I had to watch Spain link together 4,000 passes, it goes to what Bradley Carnell said at the very beginning of the year. He's like, it's not that you have the ball, it's what you do with the ball, right? So I get why. I get it.
And to be fair, like in looking at the metrics, and I give a ton of credit to someone I collaborate with so much, and Todd Lewis from the Free Kick Pod. His data is always spot on. The 70-30 whatever was bang on in the way that the Union scored goals this year. He was not off by any stretch of the imagination. If anything, I think they overperformed in goals from set pieces more than anything, because they had a stretch. I think Minnesota was only the only. And believe me, Minnesota does not play beautiful soccer after watching last night. But they were the only team that were better than the Union at set pieces. So, if the Union are going to play away, I can't fault them for playing the way that benefits both the checkbooks of the people involved that are ultimately putting the money on the line to bring in these players, right? I again, not to hype up this dude when he comes in, if he comes in, I should say, this Ezekiel Alado, but Leicester in England was interested in him. Club Bruges apparently was interested in him. So like some heavy hitters in Europe were very interested. And from what I understand, one of the reasons why he was interested in the project in Philadelphia is just seeing the path that some of the players are taking, right? Whether you're following or not, Jose Martinez is playing very well at Corinthians, has already won a trophy. You look at Leon Flock, he went to Poland, and then his first season back, he went ahead and won a trophy and is playing Europa League ball. Julian Carranza was playing Champions League ball and eliminated Inter Milan in the Champions League with one of his goals. So like here's some of these stepping stones that the players are taking, and the Union is affording them, I guess, by being well connected, but also just giving them a really good platform. It's hard to say that these guys are people from the externally are looking in and thinking this sounds great for someone like me at 20 some whatever.
Yeah, and it compounds itself, and as more of those transfers happen, you say this is a place where if I go here, I know I can go to the next level. It's like college football recruiting. It's like, am I going to go to Clemson or am I going to go to whatever other team that's not as good? They've watched Dabo put 40 bazillion guys into the NFL over the last whatever, right? And that resume speaks for itself, and it's good that the Union have that track record now, because it every guy that goes to Europe, may result in a guy, a potential prospect looking at you and saying, hey, that path may be available for me. I just think it's so funny that like they just this style. If you were going to say what is the easiest style, not that I don't want to be like derogatory with it. I just think that like, let me put it this way.
Condescending is probably the best term.
well, I don't even know if it's derogatory or not. Say you and I were like coach and assistant coach or whatever, and they handed us a high school team to coach. Yeah, they gave us the North Penn Knights, right? And they said, all right, install a style of play with this team, knowing that they're high school. Of course, they're high schoolers. Yeah, whatever. You don't have, Dimitar Berbatov at striker, whatever. What's the easiest way for us to get them to play, or the easiest thing that we can install? It's the high press German. We're going to run our asses off and be really fit and turn the other team over. That's the entry level tactical approach to this. What are we going to ask them to play? Possession, or have wing backs running up the side? The most simple thing that you can play with any player can play this system. Really, the only guy who can't do it is like Harris Medunian or like Jack McGlynn or whatever. You can run, you can play the system, but it's easy, it's entry level, but it's still effective. Versus like, the pinnacle is trying to build, tiki-taka Barcelona of 10 years ago, and those teams don't come along very often. But I just think it's like, is it good? Yes. Is it effective? Yes. Is it perfect for the Union? Yes. Is it the only thing that they can play with Jay Sugarman? Yes. Is it rudimentary? Yes. So I don't know if that's derogatory or not, but
I think to again, could be completely fair and probably not a best example, but I can pinpoint in my dumb Twitter of 7 or 8 instances where the Philadelphia Union did score goals or put together some string of passes where like, oh my God, holy shit, this does look like that 2010 Spain team.
Yeah.
Like where the fuck did this passing come from, right? Where
they
this
did have
sequence...
a bit of
They had some good flair, and
Yeah.
I would even argue that same flair is what killed them against New York City FC, because that I as I wrote for Philly Voice, like that goal was just like almost champagne soccer, and the way that they were, that through ball to the goal scorer is just like, oh my God, like that's just, you just know where someone's going to be without even looking at them. So yeah, it goes both ways.
Last topic, winter schedule. I'll keep it quick. I hated the idea of the winter schedule for the longest time. And we can't even really call it winter schedule with the way that they're going to do it, because they're not going to play in half of December and January and half of February. So essentially it's really the months that they're playing in now. It's aligned with the FIFA window. They're going to take the winter break, which may kill momentum or may not kill momentum. If your season's going shitty, now you get a lifeline. If your season's going great, now you got to wait. I just think the thing that kills me more than anything is like, there's not going to be games at Subaru in June. For 8 years in a row, I went down there and sat in the press box for all these great summer games in June. And it's just weird to think that we're only going to have the Phillies, for that stretch of time. But look, man, I think this is probably inevitable for the good of the league. I think it's good for the league. I don't know if it's the best for the Union. Kind of like the Apple TV thing was. But, I don't have a hot take one way or another, because I thought that at some point they would get here. I think if you had to do it, this is probably the best way to do it. And we just kind of have to live with the fact that this is what our climate is based on the calendar that the whole world plays on.
Yeah, I'm intrigued, right? I think that there's going to be periods of time where, based on what I'm hearing and reading about what this schedule is going to look like, there's going to be periods of time where Philadelphia Union soccer will just completely disappear and go somewhere warmer until it flips over our way and they come back. So that'll be interesting to see how it shakes out, and how they sort of piece together the schedule in terms of, are you really going to put a Miami game during that time, or are you just going to wait for Miami to come to town here to sell as many tickets for the crazy pricing that they get away with?
Yeah,
I totally understand the transfer side of things, because they've had to sell players at discount because of when the league runs. They've also had to pay for players at a premium because of when the league runs. So I totally get that angle too. But I do wonder what it means for the Union specifically. How do they go about dealing with the fact that, the summers when a lot of people have nothing to do, or they're looking for more stuff. They're not going to the
Yeah.
shore. They're not going to Sea Isle, whatever. Like, okay, well, we need something to do this weekend. Mom with 7 kids in the back of the Tahoe going to
Right.
the game on a
Yeah.
summer weekend,
Wissahickon Soccer FC United Delco. When are they?
Premier.
United? Yeah. Yeah. Premier. Right. When
Yeah.
are they
So
coming to? Yeah.
yeah, when are
Uh,
they coming to see their name on the scoreboard for all of 5 seconds? So
yeah. How much of
yeah,
the suburban Republican fan are they losing out on by doing this? That's what I wonder.
yeah.
Whereas the Apple TV paywall, they lost casual Mike from South Philly who would have watched the team on PHL, not having is Toem Ensign Premier United FC Soccer Club 98, are they coming down in December?
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
yeah.
it'll be so fascinating to see because it's another, I think I often categorize MLS into different stages, right? You had the initial, whatever, however many years out of the 30, 31 at this point. Then you have the David Beckham years, the Zlatan years, et cetera, et cetera. I think this is another inflection point of what the league is going to become, or I guess almost coming out of its shell to figure out what is our new identity, and hopefully, for the love of God, I hope it's a new playoff format that's not this streaming wars. We got to get as much context as we can in the first round of playoffs by forcing some teams to play 4 weeks worth of soccer before asking them to wait 2. So I'm as intrigued as the next person, and I hope it's beneficial for everybody involved. Actually, Kevin, since you have the same mind as I do, I know we got to run soon with it going into an hour 30 here, but I don't often talk to a lot of people who think about the financial side. What do you make specifically in terms of Apple wanting to overpay for the next couple of years, but end the deal a little bit sooner based on the reporting from Sportico with the Apple TV deal?
I think they're trying to sync themselves with the Lionel Messi timeline.
I had a gut feeling when he signed for 2028 that, like, I wonder if something's up here. That seems very
Yeah.
specific to just have it be 28, no options, just straight
Well,
up,
I
if I recall.
wonder, I think the question is how many people, so if you're not paying for, let me try to explain this. If you're Mike from South Philly, you watch the Union on PHL 17, but you're not paying double paywall, you're not paying for Apple TV and then season pass on top of it. Would Mike from South Philly pay just the Apple TV subscription to watch the Union getting all the other stuff from Apple TV at the same time? You know what I'm saying? Like, does the removal of the second paywall entice people to just go through one paywall, or do they still avoid it entirely? Because I think making people pay on top of having the subscription is ridiculous to begin with. But Apple TV is a pretty good platform now. They've got a lot of good shows. It's absolutely worth paying that just for the sub, and then you get the Union stuff there. So that's what I'm interested in. I want to know if casual Bob, will pay the $13.99 a month and then watch the Union games but benefit from all the other stuff he gets on it, versus like, I'm not doing that at all because now I got to pay the $90 on top of the 13 a month or whatever. So that's what I'm interested in. I just think it's like, that's the thing that's been done the most damage to viewership here in Philadelphia. At the end of the day, like I've said before, I think it was a smart decision by them to capitalize on all the messy viewers and go global and all that stuff. But I don't give a fuck about those people. I give a fuck about people here and whether people in Philadelphia are going to support the local team and watch them and get behind them. I think that was negative for for the Philadelphia market. But I'll beat the drum, man. I'll be like, yo, get Apple TV and you can watch the Union, but you should watch Silo, you should watch Foundation, you should watch Ted Lasso
Pluribus.
if you haven't watched it before. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff on there. And here's the other thing too, man. Like, now they increase the prices on all this shit on all of us. Like, I got like 10 notifications in like a week. Your subscription's going up to $13.99 or whatever. I'm like, all right. So I canceled like 3 of them. I'll just restart them whenever I have to, I mean, I think that's going to be the future. If we don't just, if this is like the horseshoe theory and we end up all with Comcast again at some point, maybe the alternative is we just, carry a couple subs at once And there's a lot more canceling and signing up and canceling and signing up versus like just letting it hit your credit card and be like, oh, I should have,
In hindsight, I think the one group that did it right was WWE with going with Netflix, because it doesn't get much broader than that, right? Single subscription. Just about everybody and their mother has Netflix, so why not go to the lowest barrier of entry, where I think I still have somewhere, or maybe I threw it away, or maybe my brother-in-law has it. I still have the old PlayStation 3 disc that I used to have to put into my PlayStation 3 to be able to use Netflix on my fat PlayStation. So like, it's been around that long that, I used to leverage that way. So I wonder if Netflix is where MLS ends up after all. What I do worry about is, oh my God, that's a VHS tape. Yeah, there it is.
We got some of those.
The one thing I have certainly appreciated, probably more than the average person, actually absolutely more than the average Philadelphian, is just how I can rely on this stream to be available to me, whether I'm in Seattle when I go to work, whether I'm in San Francisco, San Diego, Arizona, Colorado, etc. I just know I can tune in and watch. The no blackouts is incredible. Never mind, for me specifically, the multi-language aspect of it all, because I don't get to speak Spanish with people on a daily basis. So if I use that muscle in my brain by listening to soccer just about once or twice a week, and next year I think there's a stretch where there's three league games in 7 days or 9 days, like, that's awesome for someone like me. So I know I'm in a specific case, but I also get my shit from T-Mobile, so I don't pay a dime. Between T-Mobile and writing for the league, I get 2 codes to leverage. So I am not the average person.
Yeah, you're cruising. It's like when they accuse us of just taking the free tickets to the Sixers games and stuff. Like, they're not tickets, they're press passes. I have to work. I'm not sitting there drinking Miller Lite and eating mozzarella sticks here.
Yeah,
motherfuckers. Yeah. Oh, you just get the media gets the free pass. You get to sit there, man. I'm working. I'm not like, I'm not in the loge box with you douchebags, So
they don't know the feeling of having to file something by X hour, after you're being held hostage, waiting for a player to finish taking a shower, for quotes. Like, they don't
pull up a computer while you're watching the Eagles game. Tell me how you like it. So I will see how.
100%.
Yeah, we'll see how the Apple TV thing goes, and whether it results in more people supporting the team and watching the team. And if they don't, then they can go fuck themselves. No,
Dude, honestly, I think Netflix is the play. Go to Netflix, or even Amazon, who's trying to do something here with sports. Obviously, they're being somewhat successful over the last couple of years with these very specific NFL games that they were getting, right? Whatever. I don't know, the Taylor Swift Bowl, basically, that 1 year that got like crazy ratings. Just take MLS on a discount. They're going to be damaged goods after having to cut the deal short for whatever 3.5 years. Like,
yeah,
they'll take the same money, if not less. Like, just
maybe they can get Taylor Swift to do the MLS Cup halftime next year, after the NFL went with an alleged liberal satanic cross-dresser, or whatever the allegation was. Bad Bunny.
Dude, I'm so excited for Bad Bunny.
It's a global audience. You can't find somebody who's going to please everybody, But I do have to say, my final point for the show is I enjoyed, after the Janet Jackson wardrobe malfunction, they got real conservative for a while, and they had like Tom Petty and the Who. And it was fucking great. They brought out like the geezer train of all the old school rock bands that I like, and then eventually they got it back to pop. But that was a nice stretch for a while. But anyway, this was a very nice podcast. I enjoyed this. This had been requested by a lot of people. As Alex at Starfinder says, now that we've done the Always Soccer Postmortem, the season can officially end. But the good thing, Jose, is that the next season starts in, I think, 3 weeks, conservatively, or maybe
or at least 83 days, I think, 83 or 90 days, somewhere in between there. Honestly, it's gonna sneak up so quickly, because before you know it, this team's gonna be in wherever country now that they do international preseasons again.
Yeah.
And then somewhere in Central America, probably playing the first leg of their CONCACAF Champions Cup game.
Listen, man, as long as I don't have to watch another shitty stream on my laptop of them playing at the Tampa Bay Rowdies Stadium, I mean, what the fuck was that all about? That was like old school. If you did all that, you were an OG Philadelphia Union fan watching that garbage on, whatever that stupid stadium is down in Tampa. We're going to Clearwater for the 7th straight year. Okay.
I put a little star on my chest of pride because I was for this preseason in Spain. I was in Seattle with a VPN on hotel Wi-Fi, watching them play this Spartak Moscow team out in Marbella, Spain, at crazy hours in the morning. So like, this is the new generation of you, Kevin. I know you've talked about sort of like the old school beat writers and the new beat writers. This is one of those moments where like, that's my Kevin Kincaid moment. Like I can, that's a little vouch of honor of like, I've done
the changing of the guard, man. Yeah. It's the passing of the baton, Dave Zeitman and I live tweeted from the Soccerplex in Boyd's, Maryland with no internet so that you guys could run,
we're walking, believe me, we're walking, trying to figure it out.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, if that was Beat Writer 1.0, this is at least 2.0 here, but you felt very powerful back then, knowing that you were the only person who had updates on what Daniel Woolard was doing against Carlos Valdez at that time. So very, very special time. Thank you to everybody for chipping in. I want to shout out Sexy Hoagie in the chat, who has been chiming in. Sean C 99. We were on the shitty StreamYard tonight. We have the free version because our subscription lapsed, but I will get the podcast uploaded for everybody's listening enjoyment. Jose, thank you, man. Great stuff this year. What a year it was. I'll give you the final word on the show.
No, it was an interesting year. I think after all the uncertainty, it's unfortunate that the year ends in even more questions, right? With the Ernst Tanner thing overshadowing all of the success. But credit where it's due, surprising a lot of people, not just on the national beats, but even in the local beats with the players they brought, the performances that they put out, and ultimately maybe the foundation for next year, considering a much heavier schedule ahead. So it's nice to have year, I guess at this point is like 4 or 5 of doing it more focused of the beat writing, so only getting better. So I appreciate everybody, you included, for guiding me whenever I have questions, but certainly readers and watchers, writers, etc., listeners, for the words of kindness and support. So awesome season. Just time to shake it off for next one.
Well, onward and upward, as they say. As long as I'm the editor of Crossing Broad, I'll always find time for the union. And if the 4for4s don't like it, then they can go fuck themselves. No, we appreciate all of them reading. I wish they would just not shit on the team. All right. Anyway, thank you everybody for listening. We will see you next year.